Hi, my name is Harriette Rothwell. I've been involved in nonprofits since around 2003, and more specifically with nonprofits in Latin America since around 2005. I am the founder and director of Pionero Philathropy. So Pionero's story starts when I was trying to decide what degree I wanted to do. So I chose international management and Spanish. To be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do at the time, but it seemed like a safe option for me and it would give me a high-paying job in the future. So I didn't want to take a gap year, but my mum had this idea that I should go and volunteer somewhere for the summer. I agreed, mum knows best, but I really didn't realize at that moment how much that trip would change the course of my life. One thing that really stands out to me is I also remember watching some children collecting some water from a well, then realizing just how far they had to carry it. This was a really turning point moment and opened my eyes just to see what real poverty looks like. So I came back to England and I really didn't realize just how much that trip to Ghana changed my life. I felt completely different. And I decided that I wanted to use my degree to help others rather than just myself. So my third year of university, I went to Chile and I worked for Amnesty International there. That was my first experience working in a nonprofit in Latin America. I also traveled a lot. I went to Central America, Latin America, many different countries, and I just simply fell in love with the culture. I came back from Chile for my final year of university, and everyone noticed that I had changed, up to the point where they even gave me a prize for person most likely to change the world. I laughed it off, it was funny at the time, but it was actually something really meaningful to me. So I did my master's in London and worked for various nonprofits there. However, I just felt like I wasn't really making the impact I wanted, so I decided to go to Africa again, and I went to Sierra Leone. I had a wonderful year there and a really amazing experience, but I just still didn't feel that connection that I had when I was in Latin America. So I got my dream job. I found something in Costa Rica, and it was a senior role with a big team, with 2 really great projects, and I was just so excited to be going back to Latin America. And when I arrived, it was even better than I imagined. There were big blue butterflies the size of dinner plates, there were monkeys everywhere. It was literally like I was living in the Jungle Book. But after a month, things went downhill really fast. I had real problems with the nonprofit. I was working really hard, I was very, very stressed and unsupported, and I even started to question myself and what I was doing. And then on top of all of that, I received the news that my mum had got breast cancer. So that was the end of it. I quit and I left the country. I went back home. While I was at home, I heard from Adam. He's a friend, mentor, and now board member of Pionero Philathropy. He wanted my help with a nonprofit back in Costa Rica. So thankfully my mum recovered and I went back to Costa Rica. This nonprofit was great. It had a lot of good people, but in the end, there was a lot of insurmountable problems. After all these experiences, these terrible experiences with nonprofits, I really started to question myself. Is nonprofits the right path for me for the rest of my life? I decided I would give nonprofits one last try. So I started looking online, looking at different jobs, and I got an interview for a nonprofit in Guatemala. Knowing my experience, I really didn't want to work for another bad apple nonprofit. So in the interview, I really grilled them in many areas. I got the job. I was in Guatemala 2 weeks later, working for a nonprofit called Niños de Guatemala, which actually now is one of our partner nonprofits with Pionero Philathropy. During this time at Niños de Guatemala, I went for dinner with Adam, and we were reflecting on all our experiences with nonprofits, good and bad. And he gave me this amazing idea. He said, why don't you be the connection between major donors and all these amazing nonprofits that you know? I left that dinner inspired and motivated. I came back to Guatemala, I wrote a business plan, and 2 months later, I went back to see Adam with this plan. Adam loved my business plan, he loved the idea. So I came back to Guatemala even more determined and now needed the money to fund Pionero Philathropy. So what I did is I got a second job teaching English online to Chinese children. My boyfriend thinks I'm absolutely crazy. I get up every day at 3 a.m. to basically teach, sing and dance to Chinese children. But what I say is it's what I have to do in order to make my dream a reality. I left my job at Niños de Guatemala at the end of 2017 so I could focus completely on Pionero Philathropy. And the next step was to discover all these nonprofits that I knew already existed. And then one by one, I added passionate and talented people to my team who really bring the Pionero mission to life. My vision for Pionero Philanthropy is to support partner nonprofits in creating a brighter future for local Latin American communities, while also helping philanthropists to make a lasting and meaningful impact.